welcome to another Inventor Tips and Tricks tutorial, which today on the agenda is Inventor Studio, and it's Inventor Studio 2016. Be warned, it's 2016. If you're using 2015 or earlier, this will not apply to you because in 2016 they changed it. They changed a lot of Inventor Studio, and it's completely different. It's better. It's still shit, but it's better. Now, a couple of stipulations before we carry on. Set your expectations quite low, because you're not going to get anything super photorealistic or amazing. You're going to be frustrated, you're going to bang your head against a wall, you're going to be going through a lot of trial and error, and it's going to be a case of, why did I bother? Why didn't I just use Showcase? And I highly advise that if you've got Showcase, just please, for the love of God, stop right now. Go to my Showcase video and use Showcase. If you don't have Showcase, sucks to be you. And I guess this is all you've got, and I'll try and make the best of what you've got. The other stipulation, come on, right? This is rendering, right? Rendering is really PC intensive, so you need a good computer. I've got a decent enough computer. Let's have a look at my specs. It's half decent. It's not a Dell or an HP workstation, but it's a home built. It's a monster of a PC, I must admit, for a home PC. It's a Core i7 4790K. It's not overclocked. I've got 32 meg of DDR3 RAM. I have an NVIDIA GTX 970 card, a solid state drive, and it's good enough. The CPU is what you're on. The CPU is what it's all about when it comes to Studio, because we're using ray tracing rendering, which is all about that CPU. So if you've got a bit of a potato of a computer, you're going to have a hard time here. But anyway, I digress, and let's get cracking. So the example that I'm going to be using, and I'm going to make this as quick as I can, because Studio is kind of a big thing. It can be big. There's a lot of different aspects to it. Each aspect can, consume a lot of time explaining all the different variations and little settings and tweaks you can make to it. So I need to make this as quick as I can. I've rambled on for long enough, and you'll get to the point. Okay, here we go. So I'm going to be using the samples file. It's the engine Mark II. Who knows what happened to Mark I? It's a mystery. Where did Mark I go? Maybe it broke. It was designed and invented, so maybe it did. So we're going to be using this. Right, before we get going, I said that before, but I still mean it. You need to do a bit of prep work on your model. If you know you're going to be rendering it, you need to do a little bit of prep in terms of textures. So this looks dog shit. It does. It looks awful. I mean, it's got a brown main casting body to it. It's got this little sort of mustard yellow and then this kind of slate grey finish. It's awful. It's awful. So we need to put some decent textures on it. You can do that now, or you can do that once you're in the studio environment. It's up to you. But, come on. If you're going to make something an absolute naff, awful colour, then, as I said in my Showcase video, shit in, shit out. So make use of the textures that Inventor's got. So the different textures that Inventor's got, you've got 3 libraries that you can use. You've got the Inventor Material Library, the Autodesk Material Library, and the Autodesk Appearance Library. Each one of those has got various different textures in it. And just get to know which textures. That's the best advice I can give you. There's no right or wrong texture to use in anything, obviously. I mean, the colour of what you're designing is the colour of what you're designing. But make use of what textures are there. Experiment with them. See which ones you prefer, which ones you think give the best results when rendered. Because sometimes you can put a nice metal finish on something, but when it comes to it being rendered, it looks wank. But then there might be another texture which sort of looks average right now in the modelling environment, but when it comes to being rendered, it looks awesome. So I'm not going to tell you right now either which ones are the best, because I don't know. Some ones it depends what you're putting it on as well. Something might look great on this, but look rubbish on something else. So, you know what I mean, right? So what I'm going to do is just pick some colours out of the Appearance Library. So at the moment we're using the Inventor Material Library. I'm going to use the Autodesk Material Library because that's got a lot more. I'm telling lies, it's the Autodesk Appearance Library. That's the one that's got loads in there. It's got absolutely loads of them. Loads of them they're just garbage. I mean, chestnuts and a lot of woods and stuff. This is the Material Library that transfers across all the different Autodesk products. So it's got a lot of appearances in here which just aren't Inventor specific, and that's just the nature of, I guess, what it is. So let's go for anodized red. That sounds like half decent. For the casing here, for the main rear case. Hello, email. Hi. Let's go for a bit of metal, aluminum or aluminium if you're from the the English speaking world. Aluminium polished. Yeah! Let's make this aluminium polished as well. Honestly, I haven't prepped this at all. I'm literally making this up as I go along. Someone asked me for a studio video about 5 minutes ago, and I was like, yeah, I'll do that, man. Why not? Why not? So let's go for this bit here. I don't even know what it is, man. What is it? I don't know. Let's go for automotive. It's see-through. That's not very good. No, I can't be having that. Let's have a bit of satin hammered. Bit of satin hammered, yeah. I mean, if in the real world, if you're going to be doing a proper render, you're going to want to change the texture so they scale right. So if this is hammered, it should have a dimpled finish to it, but obviously the texture is too big for the actual part, so you can't see the textures to it. So if in the real world, I would probably play around with it and get the textures and the surfaces and that right, but you know, I ain't really got time for that. Anybody got time for that? Let's change this. Oh, I can't change it. Oh, sorry, that'll do. That'll do. Right, so I've played around with the textures. I'm happy with what I've got. The next thing I need to do is to jump into the studio environment. Let's get cracking. So before you do that, do a save. Save it, why not? Go to Environments at the top and then go to Inventor Studio. Now, this is a sample file, so it's already got like a preset load of rendering settings which Autodesk give you to, like, you know, here, look what we did earlier. Well, I'm not interested in what you did earlier because you probably did it wrong. So I'm going to go to the Inventor Studio browser on the left hand side. So this is your model tree, OBS, and then up in the top left you've got like animations, so preset animations that they've done. Delete. Not interested. Are you sure you want to delete it? Yes. See. And that's about it. Now they've applied a lighting style to it, but we're gonna blitz that away. We're not interested in their lighting style either. We're going to use our own. Right, so there's a number of stages that you would do here. Just a couple of bits of prep work to get it to look half decent. So the first thing is the ground plane. Now with the 2016, they've allowed you to make use of some of the things that you'll find on the view tab. So when you go to the view tab, when you're in normal modeling mode, you can switch shadows on and, you know, with the ground plane and reflections and stuff. Well, that now works in Studio in 2016. What I recommend that you do, so you're not flicking constantly between view and render, I've put the shadows and the perspective button onto the Studio rendering ribbon bar. How did I do that? How did you do that? Tell me. Right, well, you go right click on here and then you go to customize user commands. And then you go to assembly render. So that's the tab you want to put them on. So on the left hand side here, I went to the view tab, and then whichever button it was, shadows and perspective, click them and then move them across there. So I might also want like ground plane, for example. I might want to configure the ground plane so I can click that and then move it across here. I want it large and I want text on it, and then click OK. So now there's the buttons, so I don't have to keep flicking backwards and forwards to here. I probably still will, because I haven't really prepared this very well, and I don't do it on a regular basis, but the buttons are there to be moved if you want to. So, like I said, the first thing I need to play with is the ground plane. So, switch it on to perspective mode. Everything looks better on perspective mode. Science, because science. And then select the ground plane button. Now, you want the ground plane to obviously be touching the bottom of the model. Now, at the moment, it's not. For some reason, the engines are hovering above the ground. It doesn't make much sense, but on this button here, for some reason, it just switches the ground plane on and off. So obviously I have to go back to the ground plane, the view tab, and then go to the settings of the ground plane. And then the height, I need to put minus, let's guess, -3, -4. -4, is that about right? Is that on the bottom? Way high. There you go. -4, so that's about touching the bottom. You don't want the ground plane too high up, so it like sort of cuts off the bottom of the model. You want it sitting just below. Showcase has got a nice setting where you can say, put the ground at the bottom of the model. You'd think Inventor would have that, wouldn't you? No, of course it doesn't. That would be too helpful. So I'll switch off the ground plane, right? It's in the right place now, so I can turn it off. The next thing we need to do is switch on shadows. So I'm just going to use my all shadows button. If you haven't used the button, if you haven't brought the button across, you would go into the view tab and then you would go to enable all shadows. If you go to the settings, which is on the other screen, you can then change the density of your shadows. Like for example, make them darker like that, and then ambient shadows, increase the density of the ambient shadows if you wanted to. You can change the softness and whatnot. Do what you want. Do what you want. You change any of the settings in here. Trial and error. Again, I cannot stress enough, it is trial and error. There is no right setting, and most of the settings don't make any sense at all. They're just slide bars. What does a slide bar mean? It means low and high. Just twiddle it. Twiddle it until it looks how you want it to look. You're never going to replicate a certain time of day. You're never going to replicate a certain environment, cloudy, sunny. It's not going to happen in Inventor. So it's just trial and error. So there's the shadows on. If you want reflections, you can switch on reflections, but personally I think I'm in the camp that reflections look fake, and I have them off. But you can have them on if you want. Next thing I'm going to do is go to the visual style and change that to realistic, which on face value doesn't do much, but it does when it comes to ray tracing. It makes things look a lot more shiny and hi email, hi, and it makes the reflections and stuff and shadows and things look much more realistic. I think a good way to test that is we'll go to aluminium. I thought polish would have done it actually, possibly not. Chrome perhaps. Let's make it chrome. Chrome polished. That doesn't very fucking chrome. As if that's chrome. What gives, man? What gives? Let's edit this. Is this got a material override? What's it doing? Ah! A nuisance. What's going on? What the shit is going on? And now it's black, obviously. Right, well, what we want to do is we want to come into here and we want to clear the override. So it's just default. Return. I'm applying a material override. Chrome, polished. Let's go back into Studio. It better be Chrome in Studio or I'm going to lose my shit. What the fuck? Let's render it. Let's see what it comes out like in a render. It's Chrome. Right, okay, so it's just bugged out. It's just clearly bugged out. Right. I'm not bothered. I'm going to crack on. I would have stopped the video on any other day and started it again, but I really can't be arsed because I've done too much already and I'm starving. I want some tea. So I'm going to crack on. So it's bugged out. Anybody from Autodesk watching, sort your shit out, man. Sort it out. But for now, not fussed. I'm not fussed. I know it's going to look fine on the final render. So clearly it's just a graphical glitch. Okay, so that's our shadows sorted out. That's our textures sorted out. The ground plane is also sorted out. And what else do we need to do? Well, not the final thing, but one of the final things is the background. It's the lighting. So we need to look at what kind of environment we want a model to sit in. Again, a new feature in 2016 is our ability to use IBLs. What's an IBL? No, it's not a sexually transmitted disease. It's image-based lighting. IBL is a way of putting in it's like a domed sort of spherical image at the background. It's got a picture wrapped around it. And that picture reflects off your model. And it looks mint. It looks awesome. So don't use the ones in here. Don't go to the View tab. This is where it starts to get a bit hit and miss, a bit confusing, a bit like, well, you can use these, but I can't use these. No. In the render environment, go to Studio Lighting Styles. Minimize that, go to Global Lighting Styles, and then pick one of these preset lighting styles. Again, whichever one you want to pick looks best. Go for it. But I prefer the plain ones. Like, for example, Photo Booth is a good one. Photo Booth. Right click on it, make it active. And you've got some settings over here on the right hand side. Note that these settings don't affect and are not affected if you had used any of these lighting styles in the normal modeling environment. So for example, like the old warehouse is in here. The old warehouse is that one with like with a warehouse in the background. Of course it has. But any settings you changed in the normal modeling environment for old warehouse wouldn't filter their way through into Studio. It's a completely separate configurable lighting style. So anything you do here is specific to Studio, is what I'm trying to get at in a long-winded kind of way. So enable Photo Booth, tick display scene image if you want to, and that'll put the picture in the background. If you don't have the scene image on, so let's go to old warehouse. No, let's not save that. Let's enable old warehouse. So it's reflecting the picture of the warehouse. Oh, you've went Chrome now, have you? Oh, that's convenient. So you can see it's reflecting the Chrome Warehouse picture, which is wrapped around the environment, but you can't see the picture in the background. But if you take that, then you can see it like that. So I don't want to use the warehouse one, I want to use the photo booth. So let's not save that, let's activate photo booth, take the image. The photo booth is just a plain background, so it looks sort of clinical and crisp and fresh and sick, man. And you don't have any distortion in the background or anything else to worry about. It's just plain and simple. So for the settings on the right hand side, you've got things like exposure, which just increases the ambient brightness in the background. The rotation will rotate the picture if you've got a physical, viewable picture in the background. The scale, again, maximizes and minimizes the size of the picture in the background if your model's massive or small. And the shadows, it just increases or decreases the softness, aka blurriness effect of the shadows on the floor. So we'll save that. So that's our background sorted out. And the final thing, it is really the final thing now that we need to sort out for a final still image. This is all leading up to a still image for now. I'll show you rendering and animations in a second, in a bit. But this is for a still image, is the camera. Now, if you want to, you can just say render the image and just do it like this, as it is, looking through your view as it is now. However, what I recommend that you do for just a little bit more realism is create a camera, because you can put an effect on the camera which just makes the image look that little bit better. So orbit around until you got it to about where you want the image to be taken from. So say if I want an image of this angle, orbit to that point. On the left hand side, right click on cameras and then create a camera from your view. Right click on that camera, you can rename it if you want to, but I can't be asked. But right click on that camera and then edit it. Tick link to view. Make sure you're on perspective, which it should be because we enabled it earlier. And then tick depth of field. Click link focus plane to camera target. Press F4 and then left click on an area that you want to focus the camera on, because we're going to add f-stop, which is going to put like a blurring sort of professional look to the camera. So we want our focus point to be our target point of the camera, which is going to be about there. So that's going to be, the camera's going to focus on this point here. Okay. The next thing you want to do is change this setting here to f-stop. Now you can change, right, there's no right or wrong settings here again. These settings will all change and differ based on how big your model is. So I'm not in any position to say make it this number and it will look okay. But based on the size of the model I'm working on, I'm going to say I want an f-stop value of about 2 and then press OK. Now it doesn't do anything because you can't see any of the camera effects until the final render, which is really annoying because again, that's when trial and error comes in. If you've got a really slow PC, you've got to wait ages for it to render before you think, oh shit, it looks crap. And then you've got to change the settings again, then start the render again. Bollocks, I need to do it again, tweak this, and then go back, render it again. It's so frustrating. That's why I said at the start, be prepared to be frustrated. But we're all good. I think we're ready to do our first pass at the render. So what you do is you click render image at the top left, and you've got a bunch of preset resolutions that you can output to. So this is the size of the picture. Think of your monitor. Think of resolution sizes for monitors. That's typically what photos are based on, rightly or wrongly. I don't know, someone might argue with that, but say if you want a full HD image, the render width would be 1920 and the height would be 1080, I think it is. Oh, sod of dog. Hang on a minute. 1920, untick lock aspect ratio, and then 1080. I think it's 1080. I might be wrong. It's about that. But that's a decent sized picture. That's a decent sized 1080p picture. 1080p, of course it is 1080p. Duh. For the camera, we want to render the picture looking through camera 1, which is the camera we set up earlier. For the lighting style, we want to use photo booth because we've changed it a little bit and tinkered it to slightly just to suit our settings. The output, you don't need to do anything here. For the renderer, this is where sort of all the magic happens. This is where you sort of make or break your picture. For the render duration, it's going to ray trace the image. Now you can specify I want 32 render iterations of ray tracing, but trust me, after 32 rendering iterations, it'll still look bollocks. It'll look really grainy. And one thing I have noticed as well, based on that output resolution that I've put here, if you look, you can see this little square here. The camera is zoomed too far in, so it's actually going to chop off the top of my model. I really don't care though. I don't care. What I would have done again in production, if I was doing a proper sales render, I would edit the camera, zoom out a little bit further, change the target, and make sure that this model fits within that square, this little white, very faint white square in the background. But right now, for this tutorial, I couldn't give a monkeys, as long as the quality is good. So for the renderer, yes, like I said, don't do 32 iterations. What you want to do is just select until satisfactory, or if you're brave, put in a value here like an hour or half an hour. But until you're happy that you've got your settings right, just select until satisfactory. So then you can sort of gauge whether or not it's right or wrong before you commit to a final one. For the lighting and material accuracy, obviously you want to go for high on the final sales render. But if you're just still messing about with cameras and materials and textures and you're like, oh, I'm not too sure if that texture looks right, I want to change the textures, and you don't want to wait ages before you get to the point where you're happy with it or not, you can go for lower draft. This is just impact options. The higher, high is going to take longer to render, low is going to render quicker, obviously. But I'm going to go for high. This bit here just doesn't work. It's flat out. At the moment, as of today, which is the 9th of June, this setting is bugged completely. It doesn't matter what you pick here. Anything, you can put in any number, type in any value, it's bugged. It doesn't work. I've registered it as a bug. Autodesk have acknowledged it's a bug, and they'll fix it at some point. But it doesn't work for now. Click render. Right, what it's going to do, it's going to ray trace forever until I'm happy with it. Actually, the camera does look pretty bot. Yeah, that looks pretty blurry. The f-stop value. But this is where the trial and error comes into it. You put a setting in, you render it, and you think, oh God, it doesn't look very good. But the problem is, it takes so long before it gets to the point where you can actually make a decision whether it looks bad or looks good. And I think it's pretty obvious that it looks actually quite bad. So what I'm going to do is shut this down. I'm going to close that. I'm going to go back to the camera. Edit the camera. Yeah, let's edit the camera. And you can see here, that square there, that's where the camera's actually focusing on. So we'll just grab that and we'll make that a bit bigger. That'll do. I think the f-stop might change that to, I don't know, 3, 4 perhaps. Don't know. Let's see what that looks like. Change that to 4, render image, go back to the renderer. Because it took a while, let's change that back to draft and then click render and see what it looks like. So it looks like it doesn't fit in, but that's just because the box is a little bit too big, too small even. Let's just put that down a bit. Let's just let it render. The problem with this video here, I can't sit in silence for 30 minutes or 15 minutes or 10 minutes whilst it does an image. Before I show you what it looks like in the final pass, because that would just make for a very long YouTube video, very boring and long YouTube video. So I'm going to shut that down. Let's go to high, click render, see what this one looks like. But you can tell just off the first couple of passes, it's going to look okay. It is going to look fine, I think. The camera target is around about here, so this bit here is sort of in focus. It's more crisp and clear. And because we've got an f-stop value, the rear of the model is blurry. F-stop's all about how much light comes into the lens, so I've been told. I ain't no photographer, but that's what I've been told. And it looks kind of alright, doesn't it, I think? Looks alright. But the render engine in Inventor is really not brilliant. I don't know why it's so slow, because I've recently done a showcase video which used ray tracing, and showcase can produce some amazing ray tracing renders in a fraction of the time that Inventor can. But I'm just trying to fit in time. But I mean, look at that. That looks okay. You can tell. Give it another 10-15 minutes, and that'll look sharp as a duck's beak. And I'm not going to do that though. But it looks okay. Once you're happy with the render, once you're like, yeah, I'll do that. I can do that. It's fine. You've let it render. You've let it become less grainy. You can hit pause and then hit save. And then save this picture out to the desktop. Save it out as a BMP, bitmap file, and then go to your desktop. There it is, and then there's your picture. So after 5 or 10 more minutes, that would look pretty good, I would say. It's not photorealistic, but it's okay. It's okay. Right, animations. What's animations all about? Right, well, animations are honestly, someone asked me about it. I have to cover it, but I would really not recommend you do animations in Inventor Studio. It takes so long. An animation is, obviously it's a video file, but the way it does it is it does an animation based on frames per second. So if you do a 10-second animation, at 30 frames per second, it has to render 300 frames, and each one of those frames is going to take as long as it was just taking there for that last ray trace. So you're looking at potentially waiting 10 minutes per frame times 300. That's 300 times 10 minutes. You do the maths. Can you really be bothered? Can you really be bothered? I couldn't. Really, genuinely, I couldn't be bothered. Showcase again will do it in. It'll do a much better quality animation in far less time. Far less time. Either way, right. I need to make this quick because the video's already gone on for far too long. But to do an animation, what you do is you go to the animation timeline. You enable that. And you then tell Inventor how long you want your animation to be. So at the bottom here, you go to the animation options. And then, where's that popped up on the other screen? You change this to be, I don't know, 10 seconds or however many seconds you want. You can verify how long you want the velocity to be in the first 20%, increase in speed over the first 20%, even speed over 60%, then drop off. So it just looks a little bit more professional, so it's not like sort of stop, start, stop, dead quick. So 10 seconds. And then you've got to tell it what you want it to do over 10 seconds, right? I should probably make a separate video just for all these actions because there is so much you can do in the video. You can animate constraints. So for example, if you've got like an angular constraint, you can animate that angular constraint going from its current value. So say if you've got an angular constraint at 90 degrees, you can animate the two components that the angular constraint is on from 90 degrees to 150 degrees over 5 seconds. And it'll move your components based on that constraint. Fade, you can animate components fading in and out over a set period of time. You can animate positional reps. So if you've got like an open and closed positional rep, you can animate the model going from one positional rep to the other over 10 seconds. There's so much you can do. Oh my god, I can't do it all. But I guess what you would probably do in Studio is a camera animation, like a 3D orbit type thing. Is the thing you would do. So what you would do is animate camera. And right, let's animate camera 1. Right, so we'll go for a turntable. Enable the turntable action, and then the origin is going to be, in this case, is it the y-axis? Is that what's pointing up? Yeah, the y-axis is pointing up. So the origin is going to be the y-axis. And this, if you look at the little glyph here, that's where it's going to orbit around. Now that's no good. That's really no good. So what we need to do is try and move this, but that's based on the camera target. So I guess what we need to do is change the target of the camera. Can we do that in here? I don't think we can. Let's configure the rest of the settings first. So we want to do 1 revolution around the y-axis. 1 revolution per minute isn't going to work over 10 seconds, so we want to do 1 revolution, just 1, that'll be fine, plus or minus 1 revolution over 10 seconds. So start at 0. Duration 10 seconds. That's fine. That'll do. Yeah. And yeah. Okay. Right. So for the camera itself, we need to edit that, and we want to change the target. The target is going to be the center, which is going to be around about here, I think. Will that do? Yeah, that's about the center. Yeah. Okay. Press OK. And hopefully now we can preview what this is going to look like. So we'll expand the action editor. There's this thing here, this blue bar is our camera turntable. So animating the camera 1, starting at 0, ending at 10. Let's look through camera 1 and press play. There you go, there's your camera orbiting around the center. Aye, it's not very spectacular, it is what it is. Okay, what you then do is render it. So instead of render image, you go to render animation. For a video, hi email, hi. Instead of going for full HD, that's going to take so long. Oh my god, that'll take ages. I would start at a very small resolution, so maybe 800 by 600. You want to render camera 1. You want to render your lighting style. The output is, I don't know why you've got to do this. This is a throwback from years ago, but you've got to, even though we've already said 10 seconds in the action editor, you've got to put 10 seconds in here. The format is going to be a video format. The frame rate, obviously this is how many frames per second there is. Now I used an example earlier of 30. 30 is about about average for a decent video. 60 is like super awesome quality, but that's going to double the time it's going to take. It defaults to 15 frames per second, but it's not going to be jerky, but it's not going to look brilliant. So, but for a first pass, do 15 frames per second. On the render, we want to do a render until, obviously you can't do until satisfactory for a video because it would never end. We just keep on going for ages. So this is going to do 1 minute of rendering per frame. So we've got 15 frames per second. Each frame is a minute, and we've got 10 seconds. So it's still going to take a long time, and it's not going to be brilliant quality at the end of it either. But it is what it is. I'm going to do renders by iteration. So I'm going to do 15 iterations at a high quality, and yeah, that'll do. Click render. The file type is going to be an AVI, and we're going to go to the desktop. Right, this type here, this is based on codecs. Oh my god, I could talk about codecs for ages. If you're in the business of putting out video renders, you're going to be doing it as a part of your job. You need to research video codecs. I can't teach you about it in this video. It would take too long. Google video codecs and look it up, and that hopefully should give you a bit of idea about what codecs are going to do for your videos. But for now, just pick AVI. Save it as whatever name you want on your desktop. Click save, and for now, just go for full frames uncompressed. It's not going to be using a codec. The file size is going to be phenomenal. It's going to be massive, but it is what it is. Click OK. It's got 151 frames to render, and it's going to do 10 iterations. Oh no, 15 iterations per frame. So you can see it's slowly doing iterations down here. It'll get to 15, and then it'll start the second frame. It's going to take so long. Oh my god, I can't wait for this to finish. It's going to take too long. But that's how you would do an animation. It will look like it looks here. It will look as it looks at the 15th iteration, and it will then orbit around 360 degrees. It'll be grainy as balls, but it is what it is. Oh my god. Oh, this video is far too long, but hopefully it'll give you a good idea of what Studio is all about in 2016. What changes the word. Now, with a few things that I didn't cover, which if there's some demand for it, please put it in the comments down below if you want to know a bit more about Studio. If you want to go into the real nitty gritty, if you want to go balls deep into them, I will do another video on either each subject or a really long video covering them all, but beware, that will be a long video. Things I didn't cover, local lights. Primarily, I didn't cover these because they're shit. Local lights in Inventor Studio are awful. They really are terrible. Nope, they're a mystery. They're like the dark arts. Nobody knows how they work. But they're there, and they're there to be used if you can use them. And all the other animation settings. We've got video producer, we've got animating lights, we've got loads of different settings that we can play with, but we haven't had time. But what I've showed you here should be enough to get you going. However, it's not a really very good way to finish the video. Just use Showcase, man. If you've got Product Design Suite, go and use Showcase. If you're a student, go download Showcase. It's free if you're a student. Go and use it. It's much better. And then look at my other video that I've got in here, which shows you how to use Showcase. Thank you. Hopefully that was good and useful for somebody out there. If it was, please press like on the video, subscribe, etc., 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 and put a comment down below if you've got anything to say. I will read them. I do read them. I do, honestly. But yeah, thank you very much. Cheers, bye.